Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining us. My name is Claire, and I'm with the Environmental Peacebuilding Association. And I'd like to welcome you to this second webinar in a two-part webinar series on Indigenous perspectives on conflict and conservation. The Environmental Peacebuilding Association is really excited to have this webinar as part of the Road to Geneva, which is a series of events leading up to the second International Conference on Environmental Peacebuilding. So if you'd like to learn more about the Road to Geneva or the conference, I will put a link to our website in the chat. I want to thank Mirali and all of our panelists for this conversation. I think it's going to offer a really important contribution to dialogue on environmental peacebuilding. So with that, thanks again to all of you joining us, and I will turn it over to Mirali.
Can everyone hear me? Yeah. Thank you for joining, everybody. My name is Mirali. Today we are going to be doing two events with individuals who are part of Indigenous and local communities from around the world. We're going to be discussing the interplay between environment and conservation and the different types of conflict within communities. If you have any questions, we might have time at the end of the event, and if not, I've posted the email that you can send them to in the Zoom chat. We welcome questions, so anyone who wants to ask is more than welcome. If you think of something during the conference, you can put it in the Q&A section as well, and we'll try to get to it. Also, if anyone here is coming from communities that we're talking about today and are maybe less comfortable speaking English, I can always forward questions in Japanese or Finnish. And without further ado, I'll pass it on to Vince. Would you like to introduce yourself?
All right. Aloha mai kako. My name is Vince Okada-Coelho. I'm connected here today from Honolulu, Hawaii. I'm currently an assistant professor of social work at Hawaii Pacific University. I have lived here in Hawaii in and out for about 15 years now. I was born and raised in Japan, but it wasn't until my the PhD time at University of Hawaii at Manoa to really get to know about Ainu. I did my PhD research on Ainu, the Japanese policies and educations around Japanese indigenous people, Ainu. During my research time, I met Maya's parents. Then when I coordinated a youth leadership program here in Hawaii, Maya's parents recommended Maya should participate in our program. So back then she was a high school student. She came to Hawaii several times to meet with Native Hawaiians and local people here. Well, I received my educations in Japan up to high school, and since then, I have been gone from my home country. And being away, I see great things about Japan, and also things that need to be improved. I have concerns about Japan, and I have lots of hopes for Japan as well. I'm not a political expert, but I'm very concerned about the way decisions are made. Um, then I met Maya, her parents, and other Ainu folks, and I also work often with Okinawans as well. I heard many stories, thoughts, and opinions. I really wish Japan and the society would accept more diversity, and not just at the surface level, but structural wise as well. So develop ways to listen to the voices of all of the people in Japan. So I feel like my Kriana or contributions as an educator is to provide as many opportunities as possible for people, especially youth like Maya, to share their voices and thoughts and opinion. And this is like the second or third time to give presentation or talk together with Maya. But in the near future, I think I would not need to be here with her. She will have more experience, especially regarding speaking English as well, and she would not need my help or support anymore in the near future. But so that is actually my wish, my hope. I know she's very motivated, but for today, I'm here to support Maya, especially when she needs more the language support. and I'm sure she'll be okay. So I try to be as quiet as possible. But anyway, mahalo and thank you, Mirali, for all of the coordinations and arrangements. So it's great to be here today with Eero and to exchange some dialogues together today. So mahalo.
Thank you so much. Maya, would you like to introduce yourself?
Ilang karapte. Hello. Sekine maya sekoro kurehan. Tane, shishirimu ka pet hontom tan niptai pipashkotan ko apa makakune wa. Tane Kanagawa ken otan kampine tsorun karapakoro makana kukiyak na pilika no ainu itak pirasaya shikai ka. Ke koshiramu suipak ne. Duamu kirian na. So, my name is Maya Sekine. I was born in small town called Nibutani in Hokkaido, where 70 to 80% of the population are Ainu. There are about 300 residents. Ainu culture remains strong here, there, and it is a place where we Ainu can learn about our culture and traditional stories. So in Nibutani, I grew up with my friends and family around me and lived close with nature. So right now, I study at Keio University, close to Tokyo, so Kanto area. So at university, I also study more about Ainu language and culture with my friends. I enjoy learning the Ainu language as a living language. My friends and I started our own YouTube channel called Shito Channel to give a chance for more people to learn about us. So, my name is Maya Sekine. 言ったか。So, I'm really looking forward to join this event, and I'm glad to see you, and I want to share my thinking. So thank you for inviting me. So to talk about great things. Thank you. So Mirali, could you share the pictures? Here now is great. Yeah, thank you. So I want to share the picture. My hometown's pictures. This is my hometown's rivers. I went to catch a fish when after school. We went to when I was young, we went to catch the fish in this river. So we could, please next one, please. So this is my hometown, and these are Ainu's traditional house in Nibutani. Nibutani. Please, next one. This is also Nibutani's mountain. We called Opshinupuri. Hard to say. なんて言うんだろう。伝説の山ってなんて言うんですかね。
This is a legendary mountain, sacred for Ainu.
そう、なんだ、おきくるみカムイが射抜いた、こう、矢で行って、穴が開いていて、夏至の日にだけここに太陽がはまる山が。
So you see a little hole in the mountains. So during the day of the winter solstice, the sun is going to be there, but it's well known for the Ainu kind of hit the arrow towards there. So there's the gap or hole over there.
Once a year, we could see it. Next one, please. And this is me. So when I go back to my hometown, I took a picture on the lake. So maybe I think this lake looks like Sámi one. Yeah. When I was young, I played with tree. And this is my grandma and me. So almost all of year we go to the mountain and pick a wild vegetables and some mushrooms or some plants to eat and to make traditional things. And we in the winter we hunt the deers and we dressing deers. This is my job. Like this is my job.
Thank you so much, Maya. Those were great pictures. Eero, would you like to introduce yourself?
Hey everyone, I'm Eero Orbas from Finnish Lapland, and I'm 10th generation reindeer herder. Maybe there has been reindeer herding longer, but there is no written history before that. And I came to this program because we met with Mirali about 3 years ago. She visited our farm, reindeer farm here in Lapland. And we have the same current concerns about the current state of the nature. So I came here to help Mirali with her project. And that's all. I think that's enough about me, and then we can continue.
Thank you. So now that the panelists have introduced themselves, we thought it might be a nice idea to start by introducing the communities being discussed today as well, for anyone who might not be familiar. So Maya, would you please tell us a bit more about the Ainu community?
So, you know, the word Ainu in Ainu language means human. Is it right? Human. So Japanese people often say Ainu minzoku, which literally means human. So this sounds strange to me. So the word Ainu has so much deep meanings, such as we call people who are respectful and people whom we can trust and called people or Ainu. So Ainu means human. So my family told me that no matter where you're from, no matter what your blood is, if you are a good human, you are Ainu. So I still think so. The Ainu also believe everything has a ramat. It means soul or spirit. So we have to respect everything around us, even small rocks and even tables and even smartphones or even mirrors. We have to respect it. And I like this kind of thinking. Our ancestors taught us this kind of thinking. And I want to other people to know about this too. So Ainu thinking taught me a lot, I think. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Eero, would you like to tell us a bit about reindeer herding and Sami culture?
Yes, Sami people, they live in northern Scandinavia, in Finland, Norway, Sweden, and Russia. And most of the reindeer herders, they have been living out of reindeers or then from fishing. And also in Sami community, it has been like you have been living in the nature and with the nature, and you never try to own the nature, and you don't exploit the nature, you just take what you need for living. And it's same thing for the Sami people, that Sami people have had many gods in nature, and what more can I say? It's a bit difficult when you come inside the community. It's really hard to tell about it for the people that come outside of it. And I think that's the main part.
Thank you so much. So I thought we could talk about how, although there are, undeniably environmental, socioeconomic, and political changes that are happening and currently causing conflict within and for Indigenous communities around the world, obligatory adaptation has been kind of a staple for many communities' survival in the past. Eero, how have reindeer herders and Sámi people adapted over time through technological changes, industry changes, environmental changes?
Well, it has a long history, and Sami people has to start evolve when the first mining companies came to the Lapland, and then they started to extract the iron ore from the land, and because the distances were so long, the companies couldn't make the big enough profit from it. So in that time, Sweden and Finland was one kingdom under the Swedish court. So the Swedish king said that the Sami people have to start to transport the ore to the companies so they wouldn't go bankrupt. So some Sami villages emptied that time when the Sami people fled, so they wouldn't have to transport the ore, and they could live with the reindeers. So that's the time when the Sami villages started to empty and they started to flee from the when the main, how do you say it? Well, we call it when the main people started to come to Lapland. And then later, the Swedish king gave permission to people to move to the Lapland, and they started to settle the Lapland. And when there come more farming and everything, then always the reindeer herders fled to the wilderness areas. And because when you want to live with the reindeers only from the nature, then you have to have the pure nature where the reindeers can find the food. So at that time, the Sami people started to fled more and more north. And finally, all the Lapland was settled already. And it went on like hundreds of years. And they did reindeer herding only by walking or with skis, or then with the reindeer and the sled. They were only transportation that were available in Lapland. And it was just in the beginning of the 90s or the last years of the 80s when we started to feed the reindeers, when the modern forest industry came to the Lapland. And they started to clear cut the forests. And after cutting the forests, they turned the soil around. So there was not anymore anything to eat for the reindeers. That was the time when we started to feed the reindeers. And when the reindeers needed more help, the reindeer herders started to use the snowmobiles. With them you could easily take big amounts of food to the forest for the reindeers. And And from that, it has been evolving so that nowadays, all the reindeers that we have, they are inside the fence through the winter because there is no chance anymore to survive in the forest. And we feed them there every day. And nowadays it has gone already so bad that when the weather comes for first 20-30 centimeters of snow, we have to start the feeding. So nowadays we are also using the quad bikes to carry the food for them. So that's the short history of the reindeer herding.
Thank you so much. Maya, how would you say that Ainu communities have adapted to the changes that they've faced?
So sorry about my not good English. So I hope that from sharing my thought as one Ainu person, it can help other people to have new perspectives. So we used to think that things would become unedible if we kept taking them more than what we needed. That was common knowledge, and it was normal to have a balanced lifestyle. It's also Sámi has, I think. And so when I go to the mountain when I was young, so my grandma taught me to never pick up the young one and never pick the more than we needed. So my family taught me a lot of knowledge to live with nature, I think. And going to the mountains has been a trend as a hobby in Japan recently. But sometimes people don't understand the rules or do not have the knowledge what to do. Like my grandma know it. So we need to have good manners and rules in order to live with the mountains. So I think our Ainu ancestors understood nature. So and knew that we were able to live thanks to the animals and plants around us. We value all of the parts in nature. So human is not centered in the world. So for example, when I hunt bears, we used not only meat and fur, but also nails, everything we used. That was for the respect to bears god. I also have a lot of god and spirits. That was supposed to be so to use everything is supposed to be the right things to do, to respect them. So in 二部谷 二部谷でその震災が起きた時の話したいね。二部谷震
So
災起
when
きた
the disaster happened in Nibutani, a hometown,
last week. So なんかおじいちゃんおばあちゃんたちが山の心配をずっとする。人間がどうかじゃなくて山が心配だとかいろんなそういう自然の心配をする。そ
so
れ
when
が
the when the disaster happened or about to happen, all of the elders were worried more about mountains, not much about humans.
I noticed human can't live without everything. So I live it as so I know our ancestor taught me like that. I lived in a small village called Kotam. There is so much of rich nature in my hometown, Nibutani, and there always used to be Kotam by the Sal River. So that Ainu didn't change the natural environment, but we choose to live by adapting with nature. So we don't have to change the nature, I think. And in modern days, especially if you live in urban setting where everything is convenient and things are abundant, we often forget that humans can't survive just with other humans. The world is not human-centered. This is also what I learned from my community and Ainu's thinking. So I think these conditions or situations just have become a norm. And I think it has become difficult for people to really feel there are the issues and problems. I think this is because people also have less relationship with nature. So 環境問題とかを身近に感じることが難しいとか、こう何かこういろんな問題が起きても値段が高くなったなとか、そういうふうに現代社会では感じてしまうけど、もっとこう直接的に環境と関わることがアイヌはしていたと思うみたいなことなんですけど、なんて言うんだろう。
So it has become really difficult to consider the environment issues around us. But if you live in the urban setting, you just see maybe, gas price, oil price change. So maybe some of the products of the store changes, but that is very, kind of small thinking. But I used to think, those changes or impacts or consequences in a more larger scales in the past.
Thank you. And I think it's important for all of us to think about how to live with the planet Earth. So not because of your ethnicity or race, but because we are all people. So we can learn a lot from many cultures and from each other. So not just from Ainu or indigenous people, I think. So for me, I learned a little bit about this wisdom from my community, almost my grandmother, and from that, and also learn from the land, not just because I'm Ainu, but because this was just a common thing to do. So right now, I think it's difficult for Ainu to pass on our culture and our language because of the environment is changed. I think it's important to think about what it means to live a good life. So, そうですね. To appreciate nature is important, I think. And my ancestor taught me like that. Thank you.
Thank you so much. So if we're talking about policy and legislature, both of those, whether that be beneficial or disadvantageous to communities, have and is shaping Indigenous livelihoods and conflict and response. Eero, in our past conversations, you had mentioned laws that monitored things like reindeer herd size that eventually forced many Sámi families away from their traditional livelihoods and into cities. Could you explain that, please?
Yes, I can. But there was what Maya said. There was one good rule, if I can put it in the nutshell, that if you wouldn't disturb the land and you just pick what is fully grown and not take more than you need, it would be already save our planet. So that was really well said. Yes, but again back to the reindeer herding. Yeah, we have many laws that control reindeer herding. The one law is which controls the amount of reindeers in Lapland. First, there is a maximum amount of reindeers that can be in Lapland. And then it's splitted to the smaller amounts that belong to the reindeer herding areas. So there's like about 50 different reindeer herding areas in Lapland, and they all have their maximum amount of reindeers what they can have. And then there is, again, it's split to the smaller amounts, and there is a maximum amount that one people can own reindeers. And only people can own reindeers, and they have to live in the reindeer herding areas. Companies cannot own the reindeers. And the maximum reindeer amount in the area is decided by the government, and they count the maximum reindeer amount from the state of the pastures that we have. And less there is food for the reindeers, the less you can have reindeers in the area. And this is where the problem comes, because it's not the reindeers that cut down the forests or turn around the soil or build factories or shops or houses or roads, but it is where the maximum amount of the reindeers is counted. So when the forest industry comes and clear cuts the forest and then turns the soil around, so the new generation of trees would grow 5 or 6 years faster, then it affects the reindeer pastures, and the reindeers pack always to the pastures where the soil is not disturbed. So there will be more pressure in the smaller area. And after that, the government says that, okay, there's too many reindeers because there is so much pressure on the pastures. And then they cut the maximum amount of the reindeers down. And usually that means that the usual cut is like 10%. And that in our area, that means about 500 reindeers. So that means that always when they cut down the maximum amount of the reindeers, then 2 or 3 families have to quit the reindeer herding because there can't be anymore so much reindeers. And this is where the mistake is at that. And now we feed the reindeers through the winter, so they don't disturb the pastures, but still the forest industry cuts down the forest and turns the soil around, and there's no reindeers in the winter pastures. But still they say that, okay, there's less pastures, so we still have to cut down the maximum amount of the reindeers. So that's one thing which creates the conflict with the forest industry, the government, and the reindeer herding. And that is our main trouble here now. And we know here in Lapland that you could do the forest industry so that you wouldn't disturb the soil. And it has been done hundreds of years, but only in the modern times, few decades, they have been doing this clear cut and turning the soil around to get the maximum profit quick as possible. And to get some perspective about the forest growing, when you turn the soil around and plant the new seeds in the ground mechanically, you get the forest grow more evenly and about 6 years faster. But the average harvesting age for the forest here in Lapland is about 90 years. So it's quite minimal, that 6 years that you gain by disturbing the soil. And for the soil to recover from about being turned over, it takes well over 100 years, maybe about 150 to 200 years. So when you know that the harvesting period is about 90 years, the soil never recovers. So here in the forest areas of the Lapland, we cannot ever anymore get back to the state that we could keep our reindeers all year round in the forest. But for but there is some areas in Lapland, in the wilderness areas, that has never been disturbed by the forest industry. There is still some big reindeer herds that doesn't need feeding. They just keep them in place so they won't spread everywhere and start to migrate when there comes snow. So they can live quite traditionally still there. So it's not always the reindeer who is fault to everything, like the government and the main people in Finland think often. Okay, was that enough for one time?
It's perfect. I was just going to ask you, because you mentioned Finland, we've had conversation about how policy and government is very different between Finland and some of the other Scandinavian countries in regard to Sami people. Could you describe that a bit, please?
Yes, yeah, like in Norway, the Norwegian government, they support a lot the Sami people compared to the Finland, and how do you say it? They see what needs the reindeer herders and Sami people have in the nature, and when they make decisions, they listen to the people. And in Sweden, the state of the forest industry has been quite good, but they are coming to now in same situation that we had like few decades ago. So in Swedish side, they have quite a big conflicts with the Sami people and the government's forest industry company. You have maybe heard about it. And they do the same promotion about the nowadays state of the forest industry that we try to do. So they are coming to the situation where we already are here in Finland.
Thank you. Vince, would you please describe some of the Japanese policy as it relates to Ainu communities?
Sure. Well, before talking about policies and laws that affect communities, I just wanted to share some kind of side talk, but a little bit. I'd like to talk about Hokkaido a little bit. So there was interesting and historical story related to climate change. Well, climate change is happening whether if you try something or not. And in the Japanese history during the Yayoi period, which was around 300 BC, so rice farming was brought into Japan from like China or Korea, but because of the colder weather in Hokkaido, or maybe back then it must be much colder than now. Up in Hokkaido, so that rice growing culture did not reach Hokkaido around that time. However, right now, so Hokkaido is actually ranked second in the amount of rice productions, and the food, the self-sufficiency ratio in Hokkaido is about almost like close to 200%, which is the highest in Japan. And Japan's average is about 40%. So you see the big difference as well. And you see the rice growing is coming to Hokkaido. So that is kind of one of the kind of proof or evidence. Yeah, the climate change is real. I mean, it's over long time, but So right now, Hokkaido rice is like really good, and we can even buy those in Hawaii right now. But anyway, so those, right now, Hokkaido has so much agriculture as the industry is one of the main industries in Hokkaido. But many would see this is because of the policy influence. Meiji government back in the late 19th century started promoting cultivations in Hokkaido, and agriculture was brought to Hokkaido with also lots of emigrations of Japanese people to Hokkaido, where Ainu people live. Yeah, so the government promoted immigrations to Hokkaido from mainland Japan, and many development related policies were enacted. So many considered those policies were assimilation policy for Ainu, and those impacted the way the Ainu lived as well. In modern era as well, the Japanese government built like dams as countermeasures to like natural disasters, like Maya just mentioned, as a story of elders earlier, but also like promotions of like public works, so which creates lots of jobs actually, but also like because of the population increase, many areas were developed as residential areas. So I'm sure there are lots of wood cutting in the forest as well. So there was an impact to the ecosystem, which I know really relied on for survival. And this is, I think, somewhat similar as what Eero just described about Sami communities as well. So definitely how the government makes decisions and how we as citizens or community members approve those decisions are critical for giving influences or impacts to each region, people, and environment for sure. Well, this may be a little bit off topic, but I really like to see how Japanese community and people are now responding to the government these days by raising more voices compared to before. You may have heard the recent news about the Tokyo Olympics organizing committees. The president made some sexism comments, and many advocates and community groups, raise voices. And if this was before, it could have been just a petition simply to demand to resign, or but instead, last few weeks, the petitions or requests I have seen from the news were for the committee president Mori and the whole committee and the government officials to learn more about gender inequalities and equalities, and come up with more specific action plans to prevent what happens, rather than just requesting for like apologizing or withdrawal from the positions as well. I mean, for the comments as well. So I think communication style used to be more top-down style, or top-down communication style, but now I think people are demanding more for like transparency or having conversations or dialogue. So I hope the policy making and decision making process in Japan and structure wise would change with the next generations or young leaders like Maya now. So that's kind of what I'm seeing at this point.
Thank you so much. If we could talk about industry and big business affect the lives of Indigenous communities in many ways. And one of these is when land and resource stakeholders, like you guys have all been saying, are challenged or start to shift, which threatens Indigenous sovereignty. Eero, there are many environmental challenges that we've talked about that you face in Finland that are being encouraged by huge industries like the paper industry, or like you mentioned, mining or windmill farming. Could you talk about how these specifically affect you and how it's changing reindeer herding in your local environment?
Well, yes, like I said already about the forest industry, it it has had a biggest impact for the reindeer herding. because lost of the winter pastures that the reindeers have. And also one of the main food for the reindeers in the autumn time is mushrooms. And the mushrooms, they live in symbiosis with the trees. And of course, when the trees are cut down, there's no mushrooms because they have not any trees to live with. And that has a really big impact to the reindeers. And nowadays, we can clearly see that when there is a year that there is poorly mushrooms, the average weight of the reindeer calves when slaughtered, it can drop like 5 or 6 kilos. And when in the good year, the average weight is about 24 kilos per reindeer calf. So it has a major impact for the economy of the reindeer herders. And the wind parks, the huge towers and the big blades, they have such an impact for the reindeer herding that in the calving season, the reindeer mothers, they are a bit afraid of the spinning blades, so they want to flee the areas where the windmills are. And it has been already researched that it was something like about 7 to 10 kilometers from the windmills is the area where the reindeers don't want to give birth. So if you have a big wind park, and it can be like 100 of hectares, and then you add that 6 to 10 kilometers around it, so it takes a huge part of the reindeer living areas out of the use. So it has also a really big impact. And some why, we don't know why, but the people want to build the big parks in the wilderness areas where there's no trees, there's no houses, there's no infrastructure, no roads or anything. So they are usually the most important reindeer pastures where they want to build. And then they build their like something like tens of kilometers of road. They clear cut it, so it has a huge impact there. And the agriculture also made a huge impact for the reindeer herding when it came to the Lapland. And there still is some collisions with the reindeer herders and the farmers, because when there is no food in the forest, if we have a really dry summer and there's no mushrooms in the autumn time, then the reindeers want to come to the farmlands. And of course, they do some damage if the conditions are really bad. And there comes some collisions that we try to prevent by building the fences around the fields, which I think we have managed to do it quite well here. So that's one huge impact for the reindeer herding also. And then the next, there is the new trend of tourism that is coming to Lapland, and it has been growing like 25% per year. Of course, now the growing stopped because of the coronavirus. So now there's nearly not any tourists in the Lapland. But like when the tourism grows, there comes every kind of companies to trying to get the maximum profits out of the tourism. So even here in Lapland, there is some companies, even from the China, they are owned by the Chinese, and like over 90% of their employees are Chinese. So they don't know the rules of living here in Lapland. They are not used to live here, so they take the tourists everywhere, disturb the nature. They make the campfires everywhere, and like for the example, there is a one small nature preserve area close to our places, and there is clearly marked places where you can make the fire, and you should not disturb the land. And this it was the last summer when the corona came and people started to be more in the nature. We could clearly see that there comes lots and lots more illegal fireplaces, and they pile the stones from the where you even shouldn't walk. They go there and pile the stones and make fireplace there and take down the old trees to make the firewood, and which is of course not legal. And the strange thing about piling the stones, it's quite new phenomenon here in Lapland. When they go hiking in the mountain or fell areas, the people pile the stones on each other, so there can be huge pile of stones moved to one place. And then some people take down the piles, of course. And there is some ancient stone piles that they are like the living places of the gods. And when the people take down the ones that the tourists have made, they also sometimes can break the ancient ones also. So it has also that kind of impact also here in Lapland. So the people should know that when they are in the nature, they should not disturb it. They should leave it as it has been. And that's one kind of impact that we also had. Yeah. Okay, I think I'm done from this.
Thank you. That was great. Industries also have, really complex dichotomous relationships with Indigenous communities that seem to benefit the community, even when perhaps not being the best for their local environment or traditional lands. Maya, the last time you and I spoke, you mentioned that some environmentally destructive industries rely on Ainu communities for a workforce, and Ainu communities rely on them for income. Would you be able to tell us a bit more about that?
Yes. So also I think Ainu is also have some issues. So in the past, Ainu could eat salmon anytime. So our staple food was salmon and deer. But salmon has been over-captured because of the fishing industry. So there was a lot of overfishing. Also, deers are overhunting, especially after the Japanese came to Hokkaido in the late 19th century. The legal regulation was established, so which affected Ainu and our customs and our life. So also mountain is similar. There are regulations. We can't go there freely to pick wild plants and vegetables anymore because of. So when I was young, I could pick wild vegetables wild vegetables in the Nibutanis mountain, but we have to go to a little bit far mountain to take our food because of tree planting. It's getting lost the mushroom and wild vegetables. So it has become more difficult to get not only food, so also materials for traditional craft are lost. So the ecosystems have been changed, and bears come down to where people live now. So sometimes city side can see the bear. Bears also lost their natural habitat because the mountain doesn't have food for them. So I think this is caused by industrial human activities, not thinking about the balance with nature. So なんて言うんだろう。北海道の自然がすごい国有林にされて、それこそ植林がされて、見たときに木の色とかがこう一色になっていくのが、私はすごい寂しいみたいな、そのホテルとか、いろんなこう施設が建てられるとか。
So right now, many hotels and facilities have been built all over in mountainside, and also the government started owning some of the some portions of the mountains as well. And as the governmental project, they plants trees. So when Maya sees the mountain now. She doesn't see the diverse of different plants or trees, but now it just you see like one kind. So it's really kind of that makes her feel really sad about the views and lack of diversity in the nature.
We missing the natural nature, and this really changed our daily life. So even though the industry is causing damage, it is also true that many people, including us, rely on the work and job from environmentally destructive industries. So, likeダムなんて言うんだろう。ダ
And
ムができて私たちの自然がなくなったり、コタンがなくなったりしたけど、でもダムができて、ダムのおかげで私たちは今働くことができてて、だから国にも何も言えないみたいな。
so the dams have been built, so that created lots of jobs for Ainu, but that also at the same time damaged their village. They lost some kotan, the residential area, but because of the projects and jobs, Ainu got jobs, so they cannot really complain about it. So that is the kind of situation right now.
Like that. So I don't have job and can live because of the industry. I think it's I think it's not good if we always rely on the government. It's better if we can take our own actions and for our lifestyle to be accepted. So I have learned customs and tradition which maintained the balance between human and environment from my family and community, Ainu community, also ancestors. So our ancestors' wisdom on how to live as an Ainu are very critical for us to learn because we have learned how to position ourselves to be part of nature and the environment. So human is just part of nature, I think. So instead of blaming each other and thinking separate from each other, I think it's better to try to understand each other, regardless of country, race or ethnic blood. So I think it's important we understand each other's value and culture and find way to live together. So なんだろう、それぞれの、なんて言うんだろう、それぞれの適した環境とか、それぞれに、こう、それぞれが持つ最適な自然って違うと思うんで、それを理解するのに、やっぱりディスカッションすることが、で、それでお互いをまずは知ることが大事だと思うって言いたいんですけど。
So, you know, each region, each environment is unique and different. So first, getting to know what those are is very important. So having opportunities or increasing awareness of that would be the first great step.
Like this event. Thank you.
Thank you so much. I think if there's anything anyone else would like to address about that, please feel free. I don't want to interrupt anybody, but if you are ready, I think a good place to move the chat might be to kind of this impending environmental reality of climate change, as a few people have mentioned. So I'll just ask you all, Eero specifically, you mentioned that climate change is affecting reindeer herding with weather changes, so reindeers are moving south, blue ice, and causing difficulties with your own life, as you said, with feeding reindeer and things. What are your biggest concerns regarding climate change?
Well, our biggest concern with the climate change is that when the climate comes warmer, there is not anymore so clear winter and summer. We can often see that it's almost new normal that every autumn it first starts snowing to the warm land, then comes some minus degrees, again raining plus degrees, and then it can freeze really quickly, and it continues that for a month or two often. So it affects so that the snow is really hard, it's often frozen, and then the warmer climate means for us that it creates the blue ice in the ground, so the reindeers cannot get through it and to get the food, and it affects so that the reindeer start to migrate and they head south for looking for the better pastures. But the the phenomenon is so wide that they never can reach the land where is the better pastures, because everything is frozen, and we lose the reindeers on the way because they just starve. And then we have to take reindeers home from really far away. So it is not any more unusual that you take the reindeers home from like 200 kilometers away from your house. So that's really far away. And some reindeers even leave the reindeer herding area, so they are heading really far south. And that's where we really clearly see the climate change. And again, when the spring comes, the spring is often really long and really dry. So so it can take a really long time that the nature starts to grow and there would be something green for the reindeers to eat. And it is not any more unusual that it can be snowing in end of June. It's not anymore abnormal. And sometimes it can even be snowing in July. So that's a bit rare still, but we can see that the weather is coming really unstable. So that's our major impacts. And like I said already, that when there's some extreme dryness, so we don't get the mushrooms anymore every year. There can be that like every fourth year already that we don't get any mushrooms. Yes.
Thank you. Maya, what would you say your concerns are in regard to the Ainu community and climate change?
So I'm not expert, so バッタってなんて言うんですかね。
Grasshopper.
Grasshoppers. So when I was young, I caught the grasshoppers every day. But now we couldn't find the grasshopper in the our areas. So I'm missing grasshoppers. So in Ainu, I can see that there are much less deers in forest, and it's getting harder to pick the wild plants compared to the past because of the human impact, I think. So because of the lack of materials, we now have to pay money to buy the materials we need to make traditional craft. And this is also limits our culture, I think. So, and people have also adapted to the changes and are moving to new areas of walking, of work where they can feel they belong. So, how to say, なんだろう、私たちの、なんていうんだろう、私たち、アイヌの人たちは、こう自然を変えようじゃなくて、その自然に合わせて自分たちが住みやすいところに行こうとしてたと思うんで、なんだろう、人間が自然をどうするとかじゃなくて、こう自然、環境に自分たちが合わせるっていうのも大切だと思って言いたいんですけど。
So we Ainu are or were not the ones who changed the nature. So we were and we are the ones that adapt to changes because of the climate or environment. So I think that having the idea is really important for us.
そうですね。で、so, thank you. I would say that it's getting difficult to learn and pass on our ancestors' traditions and thinking, and to connect our thinking with nature these days because of environment has changed. So すいません、日本語ばっかで、なんか今は物が多すぎたりして、こう、自然に生かされてるっていうのがすごい実感することが難しいと思うんですけど、なんで思うっていうことですね、多分。
So right now, there's so much items, so much convenience around us. So it's really hard for us to connect to natures or thinking about how we were affected or influenced by the natures right now.
そうですね。So I think education is important and how to live as a part of world. So there is no Ainu school now, so we can't learn about our language and our culture in the school. So in the future, I hope that it will become normal for Ainu children to learn about our own culture and to live more closely with nature again. So we have toなんだろう、その自然環境、私たちの先祖が住んでた自然環境をもう一度こう作れたらいいなって思うって言いたいですね。
So we need to remind ourselves about the importance of coexisting with nature, like how ancestors did.
So for that reason, we need to understand each other, talk about what environment is best for each other, and face each other is great, I think. So, and also I think there is no one answer to fix climate change. We need to try and understand more. So I like to, なんだろう。I have a, I believe, I have a favorite Ainu saying, 関東ロは約束のアランケプシネプカイさん. It means nothing was sent from a heaven without a law, without a road. So, いろんなものがあるんですけど、でも絶対にすべてが必要なものなので、なんか今の環境がどうだよりは、今どうやって生きていくかとかを考えていけたらなって思う。なんて言うんですかね。
So in the world, there are so many things, but that has functions or roles. So we just, rather than just fighting for the issues, but we can still be kind of optimistic about how we can live with the balance. Yeah.
So, yeah, thank you. I like to think positive way. So I'm excited about the future and how our Ainu culture will be support others is I'm looking for that. I hope to live in a society where people can love themselves and appreciate each other, and we became a place to respect each other. So also today's talk is also very beneficial for this. I think I really appreciate this type of opportunity, sharing thoughts and opinions. そう、環境、私はすごい自分に沿った環境のことしか言えないんですけど、すごい私が育ってきたところが変わっていくのがやっぱり寂しいし、なので、それをまずは理解して、いろんなこうやって発信できる場があったら嬉しいって思うでいい。お願いします。
So this is more like my personal reflection, but just seeing seeing how my community, my home is changing. It's really sad to see the negatively changing. So I think the biggest first step is to learn what's going on. So I think to me that is more critical.
Thank you for listening and hear my opinion. Thank you.
Thank you so much for being here and participating. I think we all really enjoy hearing your opinion. It's wonderful. Vince, did you have any comments on climate change that you wanted to make?
Yeah, if I may, I have some thoughts and comments for more like educator perspectives. So in Japan, SDGs, the sustainable development goals that was set by the UN, United Nations, are very popular to learn in educational and even corporation settings as well in Japan. And I coordinate lots of programs for Japanese schools. So many schools groups from Japan, they love to come to Hawaii, or maybe not now, but they love to come to Hawaii and often ask me to coordinate a learning study program related to this, the topic. It is great, but it should not be that students just like memorize terms or learn the concept only, but we really need to shift the mindset, or especially for the Japanese education system. We need to establish and develop methods to listen to the needs of the community, not just learning from the textbooks or what people from other regions are saying. Find ways related to each regions and groups as well. personally, I have been in Hawaii for over 15 years, and I have learned a lot from Native Hawaiians here and local people here as well. I think way before this SDGs were established, I think Hawaiians are here, and many indigenous people have lived in sustainable ways. There are many examples of actual efforts and also the actions here, which are based on the regional and community needs. So, Japanese people usually come here. I mean, they can come here and learn how Hawaii does, but the ways and methods may not be applicable to their community in Japan. So listening to someone like Maya, their community and groups is, I think, very, very important, because it is about their home community and environment. And like Maya and also Eero mentions, each place is unique, and needs must be also place specific too. So but I feel like this has kind of changed slightly after we had a Tohoku earthquake and tsunami about 10 years ago, and we have witnessed that there were community needs, but the government couldn't catch up with the needs. So there are lots of community-based initiated nonprofit organizations or groups created to fill the gap in needs. And I think we as a human, we have a power to do that. And many local people raised voices, and we kind of started listening to each other as well. So um, yeah, also the government and structure wise, we really need to implement this, then also improved on this, because in the past our country has failed to do so. We also do have technology now, like this. We can exchange lots of thoughts and idea from all over the world, and we do have resources like network to learn from each other, also from the past as well. So rather than just using textbook or writing on paper, we really need to take actions as well. So I kind of feel that now, my own career now task is establish more learning environment and opportunities to empower people and motivate people to take actions. So, Maya also, was mentioned in the earlier, but towards this event, Maya and I, we met several times and discussed this topic and issues, and, finding ways to promote and increase awareness. And we really thought this was a great step for us, because without these type of opportunities, we might not have had, these type of discussions. But now, we're really looking forward to continuing discussing more, maybe having more people involved to have conversation. Probably, we are planning some programs or events about this with everybody like this. So it will be great. This time really reminded me that this is what I will continue doing with young leaders like Maya, to make Japan or the communities in Japan a better place, and also as a nations as well. So yeah, so thank you very much.
Thank you so much. I so appreciate you all being here, and it's been absolutely wonderful learning from all of you. I just wanted to open up the floor for any of the panelists who, if you guys had any closing thoughts or any questions that might come in from the audience, and just see if there's anything that we want to finish out with.
I have a question for Eero, if it's okay. Yeah. Are there any young leaders like you, to have opportunity to like raise voices, or maybe like get involved in politics or decision making process? Are there any like educational opportunities for youth in Finland or in your community?
Well, there is few young people that are involved with the politics, but in Lapland, still it's the wide area. It's third of the Finland, but to the parliament we get 4 people, and the total amount in the parliament is 100. So even if all the participants of the parliament from Lapland, they would be Sami, it wouldn't make the difference. So there's so few of us that we really cannot make our thoughts so that everybody would hear it. And for the politics, there is no use because there is so few of us. So it doesn't help us anyway.
I just wanted to mention that there are 2 questions that have been asked and answered in the Q&A. So if it's okay with you, Eero, I'll just read the question and you can read what you answered so that everyone can hear it. The first question is from Noelle Wrench. I hope I'm saying your name right, and I'm sorry if I'm not. Hello, thank you so much for telling your stories. My question is about how to ensure the governments can listen. What kind of processes are used? Is mediation something that is effective in terms of conflict solution? If so, what is the biggest challenge?
Well, from my point of view, I think the one way to affect how the companies work, they are certificates. They, in the final product, it gives the final user the chance to choose what they want to support and what not. Like for the forest industry, the one solution, and it would come in many places, there would be like certificate that shows that you don't disturb the land. Or like in the case of our forest industry, there could be the certificate that ensures that you are doing like constant growing, you are not doing the clear cuts, or you are not disturbing the land. It would give the people the chance to choose and show what they think, because that's, I think the money is only way to affect the companies. They don't listen what you're saying, and they don't care about the local people, and often the people that make the decisions, they are abroad, or they can be even in a completely different continent, so our voice cannot be heard. Yeah.
Thank you. And Vince and Maya, if you have anything to say, obviously, please chime in. Otherwise, the second question is also by Noelle. In terms of tourism, are there initiatives that you feel are respectful? And if so, what about them is also beneficial to you?
Was that also for me, that question? Yes, there is many responsible companies. They, when they are making decisions, they truly listen what is the needs of the local people or needs of the reindeer herders, and they take the information to their decisions, even if they will lose some profit. So there is really responsible companies. But from my point of view, I have noticed that many of the responsible companies, they are run by local people, or there is local people involved in their, like in their parliaments, or so they need to have the local view so they can really truly know how they should take the local needs in their decisions. Yes.
Sorry, I was translating the questions to Maya. But Maya, maybe Upopoi?
これもなんだろう、観光って難しいんですよね。でもなんかアイヌの場合、比較的早い段階で自分たちが生活をするために観光業っていうのを自分たちのなりわいにシフトした人もいて、なので観光アイヌって言葉もあるんですけど、でももうめちゃめちゃ早い段階から交易の民だったこともあって、こう商売人でもあるから、自分たちをそう見せる っていうことがショーになるとか、こうちょっとみたいなのが比較的他の民族と比べてもっとこう柔軟にそこに対応しているようなイメージが私の中ではまずあります。
So in her opinion, she believes that Ainu has kind of utilized the tourism as a way to make living. So there's a term even called tourism Ainu. So I think kind of similar to like Waikiki, kind of related cultural things. But so in that sense, many Ainu, in Maya's opinion, um, there are there are many Ainu people who just I think they were more flexible about the ways to use the tourism for making a living as well.
そうですね。なんでそんなこう観光がどうのこうのとかっていうのはあまりないんですけど、でもやっぱりこうないし、それがありがたい面もあるんですけど、アイヌ自身がそれを楽しんで、それが自分たちにとってこう沿っているって思いながら、それを行動できている場であればいいんじゃないかなって思います。
So some may argue that being in the tourism field, using the sharing the traditions and customs, some people might argue that that's not the appropriate way to kind of keep the traditions. But Maya believes that many Ainu appreciate actually the opportunities as well to keep the cultures and traditions, and also Ainu themselves really enjoy just being in the situations as well. So
すみません、なんかあんまり答えになってないんですけど、でもアイヌがもともと交易の民だったりとか、こう商売というか、駆け引きをして生活する民族だったので、周りの近隣の民族とか国とかと。なので、そういうのも結構こう受け入れるのがアイヌらしいかなって自分では思うんですよね。
So in the past, Ainu was traders, so they did the business with neighboring, people and nations as well. So they have the sense, kind of like business senses as well. So they accept the way how the tourism is right now.
ちゃんと答えれてるかな。Thank you.
It looks like we have two more questions. For Maya, how have the Ainu's diet been affected due to the fact that there are less deer in the forest?
Years.
しかね。
なんか、でもさっき私が話したのは私の地域のことで、すいません、Q&A 全部日本語で。なんで私の地域は村がすごいこう開発されたりして鹿が減ってるんですけど、北海道全体で見たら、狼の絶滅とか、あとは気候変動によって鹿ってめちゃめちゃ大量に大量にこう生存するようになって、で、今もう日本政府が駆除の対象とかにもしているんですよね。
So she mentioned about the decrease the numbers of deers earlier. That was more story specific to my hometown, but in general in Hokkaido, actually, because there are no wolves anymore, and I think little climate change, actually there are way more numbers of deers in Hokkaido now. So government is trying to kind of hunt them down and trying to reduce the numbers as well. So let me ask her about the food. で、食生活とかって変わったと思う？
なんだろう、食生活よりは本当にこうアイヌの精神の行き場所がないというか、狼が大事な神であって狼がいなくなって、今度鹿も大事な食料で大切にこうお互いにこう尊敬しながら生きてきたところが、こういきなり鹿肉料理みたいなジビエ料理みたいなのが流行りだしたりするのもちょっと複雑な気持ちだしっていうのが食生活ではあるのと、あとは食生活だとやっぱりこう伝統がつないでいけないんですよね。鹿を自由に取ることができない。猟銃免許が必要だったりとか、もし買うとしたらすごい高価な値段で、無断で取ったら犯罪を犯すことになるんで、なんだろう。自分たちのその知恵とかをやっぱりつないでいけないし、食べ物っていうのも残していけないというか、作り方とかがだんだんわからなくなってるとかはある気がします。
So it might not be just about the deer, but it's just I mentioned in Hokkaido there are much less wolves. So now diversity of diet has actually changed so much. So now since Hokkaido has so many deers, so Ainu cuisine becomes kind of well known for like the deer meat, but that is not actually just their food. They used to be much more diverse. And so right now, yeah, we see lots of like deer related cuisine, but that's not just Ainu food. But so since we lost lots of resources for diet and food, it's becomes hard for us to learn the traditions and custom. So that is more kind of concern.
難しい。また答えれてないかも。But, and そうですね。あとなんだろう、鹿肉がやっぱり懐かしいっていうおじいちゃんおばあちゃんたくさんいて、鮭もなんですけど、なんでこう思い出の味、なんだろう、小さい頃育ってきた味っていうのが食べれないっていうのは、すごい寂しいなって思います。
Oh, I forgot to translate one thing. So right now, in order to get deers or other animals, we need to get license. So it's not easy to go out to mountains and do hunting. So the traditional food itself become difficult to make. And so lots of seniors, elders told me that, they haven't had much deers or salmons as much as they used to before. So yeah, so they miss those food now.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you. There's one more, also for Maya and Vince. It's from Huyuki Doi. Sorry if I said your name wrong. It says, "Thank you so much for sharing your knowledge and experience with us. I think Vince's point is important. Japanese people are kind of hungry for the knowledge or getting to know a concept of SDGs, but the knowledge actually did not change their attitude towards nature, I think. Maya said she learned how forest and mountain is important from her grandma, and she knows how to live alongside with nature now. What makes the difference between ordinary Japanese and Maya, and how can people actually learn to live with nature or in the environment like Maya?" Do you have any advice more?
I'm not good. I'm not good person, I think. But that's my そうなんだろうな。なんて言えばいいんだろうな。実際にどのように学ぶか。なんだろう。私は単純に自分の周りのことしか考えてなくて、こう、単純にこう自然がなくなって自分の大好きなキノコが取れなくなる、山菜が取れなくなるっていうのが嫌だし、そういうのをこう先を長く見るみたいな、それがなくならないためにはどうしたらいいか。これをじゃあ自分の子供とか孫とかにまで同じ気持ち、同じ食べ物を食べさせたい、同じ文化で生活してほしいって思うには、どうやったら伝えたらいいかとかっていうのをいろんな人から聞く機会が多かったっていうのはある気がします。でも、そんなこれが違うっていうよりは、どうやって人間が自然界で生きていくかみたいなのをいろんな人が見せてくれた気がします。ちょっと長い。
So I'm not that special or different, but what I did was I was curious about my surroundings and I was, thinking about my hometown, the changes in my home, seeing the and the decreasing of like natures and the things I like. So I tend to look at more like have a more forward thinking, thinking about how this would be like for my next generation. I mean, the next generations of mine, and I feel like I have more opportunities to be able to listen to other people. They show me the examples and stories. So yeah, but the idea is I think I am more curious how to live with nature, so I have that kind of like awareness or willingness to learn and also having opportunity. Yeah.
で、なんかどうやって、最後なんか言ってましたよね。どうやって学ぶかみたいな。
Mm.
ね。なんか、なんだろう、でも、学ぶ、やっぱり教育で、こう、早いうちから、いろんなものがこう、つながっているみたいな感覚。食べることでも寝ることでも人と人であっても文化も全部がこうつながっている感覚っていうのを持てるようなこう教育価値観みたいなのがいろんな人にあればもう少しこう広く見ることを意識できるのかなって思います。
So I think I was fortunate to have, that kind of education to learn from other people. But if there were more like education in earlier ages to learn the connections from like food and environment or cultures and, those, if there are such educational opportunities from younger age, I think more people would have similar awareness or understanding.
One more. Sorry. なんだろう。あとは、こうなんだろう。一緒に暮らすとか、コーエクジスタンスとかいろいろ言うと思うんですけど、でもそんなこと以前に、自分たちは一部でしかないみたいな感覚がもっと必要だと思って、もっとこう自然と一緒にではなくて自然の中の自分たちっていう感覚がいろんな人が持ってたら素敵なのかなって私は思います。
So in my opinion, many people say we coexist with nature, but rather than thinking that way, we should think we are part of the nature. So that way, whatever we do is actually the part of the surrounding environment. I think that's important as well.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. It looks like we've gone through all the questions, so I just wanted to say really quickly, thank you so much to Maya, Vince, and Eero for being here and discussing all of this and teaching us all so much. It was wonderful to hear all of your perspectives and what you have to say. And thank you for everyone who joined us. We really appreciate you being here. And yeah, just thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone, for joining us. Just wanted to echo that. Thank you, Mirali, and the panelists for sharing your knowledge and bringing so many critical perspectives and insights to the table over the last hour and a half or so. And I'm really glad, too, that we'll be able to share this conversation more widely once we have the recording. So just a reminder, this was recorded, and you'll be able to find the recording on our website as well. So I think with that, we are ready to end.